Well, hey everybody, it's Dr. Austin Perlmutter. Over the weekend and this morning on my run, I was really thinking through some of the recent ideas that I've been posting about, and specifically this question of mental health and mental state, or state of mind, and how that relates to these chronic diseases, relates to the way that we interact with the world. And it made me realize something that I've thought of before, but is really becoming much more concrete, and that is that state of mind and really our mental health precedes the development of all of these chronic disease conditions, things like hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, to such a big degree. And, here I am, an internal medicine doctor, saying that mental health comes first, saying that state of mind is more important than managing blood sugar and blood pressure and heart disease. And I want to be clear, there are these instances where you need to acutely manage these conditions. So if somebody has a stroke, or somebody has a heart attack, or somebody has something called hypertensive emergency, these are instances in which you need to act immediately and give medication to bring down blood pressure, to try to remove the clot in the heart, etc. But if you think about how these conditions develop, things like elevated blood sugar, elevated blood pressure, they develop over the course of years, sometimes decades. And they're really the result of our decisions. And our decisions are the result of our state of mind. So it's the background stress, it's the background anxiety, it's the background depression that is leading to poor decision making, is leading to us basically winding up in these situations where we have these chronic preventable diseases. And as much as we'd like to focus on education around healthy lifestyle as the single most important variable, I think increasingly with the dissemination and democratization of information, it's no longer just a question of the education. It's no longer a question of knowing that junk food is bad for us. It's no longer a question of knowing that soda isn't good for us or that exercise is good for us. It's a question of, what are the things going on in our lives that are causing us to either stick to healthier decisions or go down the road of unhealthy decisions. And it is the kind of area under the curve of good versus bad decisions that is going to dictate our risk for developing chronic health problems. So I want to make a distinction here because mental health conditions can also become chronic, and there's a difference between something like diagnosable DSM-5 criteria for depression or an anxiety disorder, and that's not really what I'm talking about here. I think that's very important. I think we definitely need strategies to better manage conditions like depression and anxiety once they become diagnosable and are a major problem in a person's day-to-day life. But what we're missing here is the question of how these kind of subclinical states affect our decision-making, affect our state of mind, and therefore influence these things that we really care about, which is our long-term chances at health and happiness. There's such a wealth of information coming out as it relates to things like blood pressure and blood glucose and things like immunity and things like our mood. And certainly the connection here is bidirectional. So we know that, for example, an elevated blood sugar can affect our state of mind. It may actually, through pathways involving inflammation, make us more impulsive over time. But we also need to understand that when we're in a poor state of mind, we're more likely to make these decisions that cause us to develop elevated blood sugar, things like eating a bunch of refined carbohydrates, which over time can contribute to insulin resistance, prediabetes, and eventually to full-blown diabetes. So there are a lot of relationships there to keep in mind, but I still want to emphasize this fact that it's really the mental state that comes first. So the next question is, how do we do this? How do we get to the mental state as our primary means of making change way upstream before people ever get to a full-blown condition, whether that's a mental health or a metabolic disease state? And I think that the first step is to destigmatize the journey and to destigmatize the fact that we are all experiencing struggles with our mental health. We live in this society that clings to this fiction, and that fiction is that everyone's doing great, that people are always happy. And if you go on social media, that's kind of the prevailing theme that you will see. The truth is the exact opposite. And it's not that people aren't happy, it's that happiness isn't some sort of perpetual state. I think that, we can cite studies for this, but we all know this internally, that some mornings you wake up and you're doing well, and other mornings you wake up and you feel pretty crummy. And again, that's okay. That's just, I think, what life is. But we need to understand how these types of patterns affect our decision making, how our states of mind in those varied states of life experience are going to influence the way that we interface with the world. So again, it's not about meeting the DSM-5 criteria for a poor mental state. It's about understanding that our mental state fluctuates on a day-to-day, minute-to-minute basis. And the more that we can explore this, and the more that we can explore areas where this isn't helping us, the better, because it gives us insight into the way our minds really work. And downstream effects of this will be tremendous. So I guess to kind of close this out, what I'm trying to say is, here as an internal medicine doctor, I'm really believing that it is the mental state that comes first, that we've put way too much emphasis on the downstream manifestations of poor mental state, and that the first step in starting to right this wrong is to become curious, about how our mental state varies day to day, and what are the things that are affecting us and compromising our well-being as it relates to our mental state. And also to destigmatize and be willing to talk about the fact that things aren't always great, that's okay, but until we're willing to endorse this idea, until we're willing to have an open conversation about the fact that each of us to some extent experiences anxiety and depressive symptoms, then we're not going to be able to make any progress. So I hope this video was interesting for you. If you have any thoughts, I would love to hear them. Feel free to post on this video. And I hope you're having a wonderful day. Thanks for watching.